Healing Journeys with the Black Madonna, Chants, Music, and Sacred Practices of the Great Goddess by Alessandra Belloni. Preface: 4 mystical experiences that led me to the Black Madonna. I am fascinated and inspired by the Black Madonna. She is the female embodiment of God. Her power hails from the fact that she influences all of humanity in a very global and inclusive way. She embraces everyone, and everyone has access to her divine spirit and power. She also represents the cradle of humanity, which began in Africa. Alessandra Belloni. I fell in love with Southern Italian folk music in the late 1970s and began performing professionally in 1980. At that time, I decided to start deep field research on the folk music, theater, and dance of southern Italy. As part of this research, I participated in many religious festivals held in the regions of Lazio, Abruzzo, Campania, Naples, Calabria, Puglia, and Sicily. During this time, I discovered the rich and colorful folklore that is still alive and thriving in these remote villages, especially around the times of the feast dedicated to the Madonna. These were not your typical blonde-haired, blue-eyed versions of Mother Mary. In most cases, they were black statues or paintings known as Madonna Nera, Black Madonna, or Madonna Bruna, Brown Madonna, and they had dark skin. Often, by chance, I came upon beautiful white Romanesque or Baroque churches situated near the sea, in fields, near caves, or perched on high mountains. In these locations, I discovered the most amazing, mysterious Black Madonnas. I felt a powerful energy coming from them, from their faces and eyes full of tenderness, forgiveness, austerity, compassion, sorrow, and universal love. When I participated in the feasts and processions, I witnessed thousands of people taking vows, lifting the heavy statues, and running uphill effortlessly with them. They walked barefoot for hours, singing and chanting, crying, praying, and asking for miracles. In the beginning, I did not know that the Black Madonna was a Christian tradition with deep roots in the pre-Christian worship of Mother Earth. I also did not know why the Madonna was black. When I first asked the priest the question, "Perché la Madonna è nera?" Why is the Madonna black? The answer was curious. The priest responded, "È nera perché è nera." She is black because she is black. I took this to mean that it was a mystery and should be respected as a mystery, but still I wanted to know more. Another typical answer to my question was, "It is the candle smoke." It was obvious this was not the truth. These statues often have white and red dresses and cloaks, blue mantles and golden stars, none of which have turned black from the candle smoke. Just as there are many black Christs around the world, a large number in Italy, there are also a proliferation of Black Madonnas. I was sure there was a sound, symbolic reason for the blackness of the Madonna's skin. I was determined to find out the truth. Although it took several years, the Black Madonna manifested herself to me, opening a portal that transformed my life. The healing vision of the Black Madonna over my hospital bed. There are times in our lives when things happen so fast and so unexpectedly, especially when you are young and feel that the world is in the palm of your hand. For me, the year 1986 was one of those times. I was enjoying a successful artistic career in New York City with my music and theater company, I Giuliardi di Piazza, the Jesters of the Square, which I founded with the brilliant musician, guitarist, and composer John LaBarbera. The company was a result of our falling in love, a musical and creative love, which brought us a great deal of recognition on stage. The troupe was performing a new folk opera at Carnegie Music Hall in Pittsburgh to excellent reviews. Unfortunately, the artistic success and the stress of the grueling performance schedule brought deep conflicts between John and me. With a great deal of pain, we decided to separate that year. I admit that emotionally I was a wreck. When we entered Carnegie Music Hall for dress rehearsal, I fainted. But the show must go on. Somehow I managed to find my strength again and perform the opera Don Giovanni and his servant Pulcinella, which I wrote and directed. Yet I couldn't fully enjoy its success because I had suddenly become very ill with heavy irregular bleeding. I was young and extremely scared. When I finally went for routine testing, I was diagnosed with cervical dysplasia, a serious precancerous condition. I had to undergo surgery immediately. Cervical conization is a terrifying experience, and it affected me deeply on many levels. I felt powerless at the thought of my womb being cut and was very worried about the consequences it would have on me later, both emotionally and physically. My wonderful mother, Elvira, came from Italy to support me with her unconditional love, as she had always done. I knew that she would be praying for me as I went in for surgery at Mount Sinai Hospital. But something happened that was more intensely spiritual than I ever could have imagined. It was as though a magical portal opened for me that changed my life forever. Was it my mother's fervent prayers or something more? When I woke up in the recovery room, I had a crystal clear vision of the Black Madonna embracing me and protecting me. She was standing over my bed with her benevolent black face beaming down on me. She wore a blue cape and a gold crown, holding her arms wide open and her hands straight in front of her, as if sending me powerful rays of healing energy. There was a bright white light emanating from them, full of compassion. The Black Madonna told me that I was to follow her path, which was to feel other people's pain. I knew that my heart had suddenly opened to understand the suffering of the world and of the earth herself. I immediately turned to my right in the recovery room and knew clearly that someone nearby was dying. But it wasn't frightening. It was just part of life's cycle. I don't recall how much time passed in this blissful moment of spiritual awakening initiated by the Black Madonna, but it was so real, and I felt so protected that I did not want it to end. I told the doctors who came to check on me that I felt fine, and that I knew the woman on my right was dying. I told them that I felt an immense sadness for her. The medical team was in disbelief, seeing that I was no longer bleeding, that I had absolutely no pain, and was so awake and aware, and that I had also sensed death in the room. This was the beginning of a spiritual awakening that has transformed my personal and artistic life. When I was brought back to my room, my mother was waiting for me. The fact that my musical partner, John LaBarbera, was also there showed me that he still loved me. I felt so much joy in seeing them both, even though I could see the anxiety and fear in their faces. I told my mother about my vision of the Black Madonna. She understood immediately that I had inherited the gift from her, the ability to communicate with the Virgin Mary and receive her grace. It was a vision of the Madonna that literally saved my mother's life during a bombing in World War II in Rome, a story I will tell in greater detail later in this book. I was released from the hospital the next day, feeling completely different and knowing that I was being guided after my healing vision of the Black Madonna. It still remained a mystery to me, but I was ready to follow her path wherever it led. The Black Madonna as Mother Earth, she is alive. In January 1987, 1 month after my surgery, I decided to take a rest and leave New York so I could fully recover. I went to visit my sister, Gabriella, in Los Angeles. I was so happy to be in the sun and the heat and go to the beach in the middle of the winter. At the time, Gabriella was working in film production and writing scripts. She enjoyed a typical Hollywood lifestyle with parties and celebrities. Gabriella did not have a strong spiritual life, however. In the years to come, she often told me, "It is very difficult to be the sister of the Black Madonna." This came out of an incredible mystical experience I had during this visit with her. It happened when Gabriella's film producer boyfriend offered to take us for a ride in his private airplane. I love flying and had always wanted to go up in a small aircraft. There I was in a small 3-seater airplane, sitting alone in the back seat. Gabriella's boyfriend took us on a wonderful ride up along the Pacific coast to Santa Barbara. Soon we were gliding over the ocean, and I gazed in amazement at the gorgeous mountains and the desert. Suddenly, I heard a powerful voice speaking to me, a beautiful, haunting woman's voice coming from the ocean and the earth. It told me that she was the voice of Mother Earth, She was the voice of the beginning of life, the primordial waters. She said that she was alive, breathing, thinking, nurturing, and at times destroying. In a whisper, she told me that she was also in great pain, and that human beings were not respecting her. She said that because of this, we did not have much time left. Finally, she announced that she was the voice of the Black Madonna. Held in the arms of Father Sky, the Great Spirit, God, I began to understand the mystery of this connection. It was so overwhelming that I began to cry. As big tears rolled down my face, I wondered if my sister and her boyfriend had heard this voice too, but I was afraid to ask. What if they hadn't? Was I crazy? As I wrote this book in February 2017, I realized that a powerful dream of the Earth Mother had guided me here to Hawaii 20 years earlier. In this dream, I was flying over the earth, over the ocean, but I was in the form of a rare bird. I could see that the greed of human beings had destroyed much of the earth. I was in pain and felt desperate. Suddenly, floating over the ocean, I saw an island shaped like the stylized profile of a woman. Then I saw that the woman was crying a tear of lava. When I heard her voice, I knew that it was the voice of the earth crying out, asking me for help. I woke up sobbing, not knowing what this dream really meant, not knowing where this place was, yet I knew it existed. A few months later, I found myself using a mileage ticket to take my first trip to Hawaii. I had been invited by an Italian-American man who wanted to bring my music group to perform at the University of Hawaii. He told me that I could stay in a lovely house on the beach in Lanikai. The home was owned by his good friend Shyla. When I arrived in Lanikai, which means sacred waters in Hawaiian, I really felt I had found paradise. As I put down my bags and met Shyla, I had a strong sense of déjà vu. I felt that I had known her before and that I had been here before. Even her house seemed familiar. Then I looked across the ocean and saw the lava island of which I had dreamed. I told Shyla, I have been here before in my dreams, flying as a special bird. Shyla didn't think my dream vision was strange at all. I knew that she was a spiritual being, since she had many statues of goddesses and Madonnas throughout her home. She hugged me and said, "Then you are definitely in the right place." I asked her about the island across the water from her house and learned that it was a sacred place called Mokulua. Right then and there, I decided that I had to learn how to kayak so I could visit the island before I returned to New York. When I did go kayaking, together with my friend Tom, I discovered the lava tier as I approached the shore of the little island. I was greeted by a dozen giant turtles and amazing rare birds who were nesting there. They all started singing to me as if they had been waiting for me. I sat beside Tom on the lava rocks in shock. He looked at me in amazement and said, "You were guided here, Alessandra. The birds and turtles are happy that you have returned." Later, Shyla told me that these rare birds were called shearwater birds and were almost extinct. This was the bird I had become in my dream as I was flying over Mokulua. To Shyla's amazement, during a full moon, a few of these birds flew over her backyard on the beach as I was doing a ritual prayer to the moon, chanting and drumming using a ring. Did I call them with my songs? How could the Hawaiian birds or elements respond to my Italian ritual musical tradition? The day Tom and I kayaked to Mokulua had started out as rainy and stormy. It seemed impossible to go out onto the sea, but I felt a sudden inspiration to take out my ocean drum and chant, "Yese Sole, come out, sun." Yese Sole is an ancient Neapolitan chant involving the healing energy of the sun, which I will teach you later in this book. I went right into the ocean, chanting in the storm. Within an hour, not only did it stop raining, but the sun came out in all its glory. These two powerful experiences led me to realize even more that the Black Madonna and the Earth Mother guided me to Hawaii, showing me clearly that the Earth is alive, that the Dark Mother is alive. In Hawaii, she is known as Pele, the black female goddess of the volcano. I also knew that the sun was alive and that the endangered species had a clear message for me. We must care for her as ancient indigenous people have done for thousands of years, respecting her as a living being. It was this essential truth, the endangered state of our beautiful planet, and of humankind as well, that motivated me to create a musical production dedicated to Mother Earth and her possible salvation. My opera, The Voyage of the Black Madonna, premiered at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine and is the embodiment of my devotion. I will now guide you through this mystical journey of awakening and discovery through an ancient beautiful myth of creation, so that you too can experience the mysteries of the Black Madonna, the Earth, and the African Mother, the womb from which we all came. Introduction: Mama Elvira's Miracle. I believe that everything that happens to us is interconnected and leads us to our destinies. Even things that seem small and inconsequential, things that seem impossibly large, things that occurred before we were born. An ordeal my mother survived years before my birth helped shape me. Events that took place when I was a child, when I was too young to comprehend them and make choices, also shaped my fate. To truly understand me and the unconventional path my life took, I must bring you back to the beginning. Like pieces of a puzzle, these events will seamlessly fit together and make perfect sense. They begin with the bombing of Rome in 1943. My mother is the true source of inspiration for this book. I began writing it when my mother was still alive. Then circumstances in my life as an artist, a performer, and a woman struggling with the pain of divorce and lost loved ones led me to finish this book many years later. But perhaps the delay happened for a reason. I believe that this is a time where transformation and women's empowerment is greatly needed to make the world a better place. And I strongly feel that this book can be a stepping stone to achieve this. My mother, Elvira Rossetti, was born in a Roman neighborhood called San Lorenzo. It was the only part of the city that was bombed during World War II. Tonight in San Lorenzo, 6 decades after the bombing, there will be a feast of commemoration for the 60 years since the bombing. A celebration and fireworks. The time between sunset on August 10th and dawn on August 11th is known as the Night of the Shooting Stars, or La Notte di San Lorenzo. This year it is a magical, hot, and steamy summer night, which one can only know in Italy in the summertime. August 10th is the evening when we look up into the skies, watching the shooting stars to wish upon. Legend has it that those shooting star wishes come true, and I believe it. Back in 1943, there was no time to observe the feast since Rome had been bombed less than a month earlier by the Americans on July 19th. Now, more than 60 years later, there is a memorial ceremony to commemorate that day with photographs and books. But I don't need a memorial ceremony to remind me what happened, for my family's history is steeped in its events. My mother, then 25 years old, was living in Rome with her family when her neighborhood was bombed. Elvira had inherited psychic powers from her mother's lineage, people who were originally from Spain and were most likely Sephardic Jews or Gypsies. On July 18, 1943, the night before Rome was bombed, my mother had a premonition that San Lorenzo would be attacked. Her premonition came in the form of a powerful dream. In it, she saw bombs dropping from the skies. The building she lived in exploded, and she was buried in its ruins. As she struggled to catch her breath in this dream, my mother had an intense vision of the Madonna hovering above her, pulling her free, rescuing her from beneath the crumbled remains of what was once her home. The Madonna in my mother's dream resembled the Madonna della Strada, the Madonna of the street, who was depicted in a large painting in my mother's home. This is why, when Mama heard the warning sirens before the bombs were dropped the following day, she took the painting of the Madonna della Strada with her. Just as in the dream, the house exploded. My grandmother, mother, and her 2 younger sisters were violently hurled down 3 stories. By some miracle, my mother found herself alive and on her knees, clutching the portrait of the Madonna della Strada, with her sisters grabbing onto her. Although my mother and her sisters were safe, my grandmother wasn't so lucky. No one could find her, and it was feared that she was buried beneath the ruins under cement and dust and the bodies of other tenants. Frantic, my mother ran through the rubble, shouting her mother's name, searching for her. She found my grandmother by chance when she noticed a hand sticking out from under the wreckage and recognized the family ring on her finger. Alone, Elvira dug through the rubble with an uncommon strength that seemed to come from a heavenly force. The Madonna. Not only did the Madonna lead my mother to find my grandmother, but she also gave my mother the might to single-handedly rescue my grandmother from being buried alive. My mother was so touched by divine intervention that she didn't even realize that she was hurt and bleeding from the head. Without thinking of her own safety, my mother mustered all of her strength and compassion in an act of true unconditional love, which saved my grandmother's life. As soon as she dug grandmother free, Mama Elvira called for the firemen, who put my grandmother on a truck full of Nazi soldiers. It was headed to the best hospital in the area, San Giacomo, which had been taken over by the Germans. My mother jumped onto the truck with my grandmother, unafraid of the Nazis, praying fervently to the Madonna to save my Nonna Rosa. Nana was still breathing but not moving. She came close to losing her legs and was paralyzed at the age of 42. My grandmother and my father, who was engaged to Elvira at the time, were at work when the bombing began. Arriving at the house, they found only destruction. In desperation, they searched for the family among the rubble. It was total chaos, with frightened people running around screaming. Corpses littered the ruins. Amid the confusion, they heard stories of a brave young woman who had been miraculously found alive, clutching the Madonna della Strada, and had saved her own mother. Somehow they knew this young woman was Elvira and managed to locate her and Nonna Rosa at San Giacomo Hospital. A few days later, Regina Elena, the Queen of Italy, came to visit the people who were wounded in the bombing of San Lorenzo. She'd heard about Elvira's courage and awarded my mother the Medal of Honor. The Queen also gave my mother money because the family had lost everything they owned in the bombing. All the newspapers wrote about this courageous young woman who saved her mother's life. They even published photos of her with the Queen. For a short time, Elvira Rossetti was a heroine of the war. Elvira's World War II experience was indeed a miracle. I feel that it's important that her story be told, for it is a tale of empowerment and courage for women who, like me, are on a spiritual journey in search of the true essence of feminine energy and healing power. I have no doubt that it was the Madonna of the street who touched my mother with grace and enabled her to pull her own mother out from the rubble. This is why I dedicated my book to my mother, Mama Elvira, and to the unwavering love of the Great Mother, to Mother Earth, and to Mama Roma, the she-wolf of Rome. My vow to the Madonna is to tell my story in her honor and praise, and to bring to the world my personal journey, the one that guides me to her and her infinite compassion, and one that leads others to her as well. I am pleased that you have joined me on this pilgrimage. The journey begins. From 1943, Rome, fast forward to the year 2003, I had just left Mama Elvira to travel to the south of Italy, and I missed her so much already. Although 86 years old and blind from diabetes, she was still strong and powerful in her own way. At one point, when I helped Mama sit up in a chair, I had a revelation. It happened when I looked at the small antique painting of the Madonna and Child, painted on a piece of wood that unfolded into 3 parts by her bed. Mama had the painting for years. I remembered it from my childhood. Suddenly, I realized that the Madonna in the center was flanked by 2 female angels playing tambourines. How perfect, I thought. They are playing the instrument I learned to master, the instrument that heals and is connected to rituals for the Madonna. This is the exact same instrument played by my maternal grandfather, Nonno Rodolfo Rossetti. I asked my father if she remembered the painting and how she came to have it. Sightless, she smiled, recalling very well the Madonna and the angels with the tambourines. I could almost see her picturing them in her mind. Then Mama told me that she thought the painting was the perfect connection between her, the Madonna, and me. Chills covered my body when Mama said that she had bought this old painting before I was even born to keep it by her side always for protection. For more than 50 years, my mother had been praying to this painting of the Madonna and the angels. In times of despair, desolation, and loneliness, when my father betrayed her, insulted her, and humiliated her, for more than 50 years she found compassion, refuge, and mercy in the Madonna's sweet beneficence. What a powerful image! I looked at my mother, blind, sitting placidly in the chair where she now spent most of her time, and I wondered if she was becoming like the Madonna herself, sitting on her throne, always there for me, offering me guidance and unconditional love. I felt sad because I had to leave her to start my performance tour in southern Italy. I asked Mama for her blessing, kissed her, and hugged her, then went out the door. It broke my heart to leave her side, but I had no choice. As I went out into the heat, I heard my mother's lyrical, still young voice calling, "Sta attenta con la macchina, va piano, ton ti stancare troppo, mangia, riposa, chiamami quando arrivi, mi raccomando. Be careful on the road, go slow, don't get too tired, eat, rest, and call me when you arrive." I took the Autostrada del Sol, Highway of the Sun, to Naples, the beautiful city that has inspired so much of my work over the years, the cradle of this amazing cultura popolare, popular culture, and the heart of the folk music, dance, and drumming that honors the Black Madonna. The sunset was an amazingly vivid red and orange, perhaps due to the unbearable heat. I breathed the stifling air and looked at the familiar surroundings, trying to imagine how many times I must have driven down this highway over the past 23 years during my field trips to discover more and more about the mysteries of the Black Madonna. I love this land, the dry mountains, the small villages with their medieval towers half destroyed, their old churches full of dark Madonna icons, their cafes and bars where old men sit all day playing cards, where women pick tomatoes, singing as they work, then go to their rustic kitchens to make pungent sauces with those juicy sun-ripened tomatoes. These lovely villages are full of peasant women whose ancient faces are reminiscent of Mother Earth herself. These same women chant behind statues of the Virgin Mary during feast day processions and play the tamara with such fervent passion. Deep in my soul, I feel that I am one of them. Exiting the highway at Castellamare di Stabia, which sits on the Bay of Naples, I pass the ruins of Pompeii and the ancient Roman thermal baths, where for thousands of years people have come to be cured by the healing mud and curative waters. Many memories flooded back to me as I sat alone by the pool at the Hotel delle Terme in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, the sleeping volcano. On this eve of San Lorenzo, I gazed at the huge full moon and waited for a shooting star upon which to make my special wish. As I bathed in the thermal waters that night in the ancient land of the Black Madonna, I stared at the moon through my hands, which I held in a triangle shape. This was my secret ritual of praying and receiving energy from the goddess of the moon, Diana, but in no way did I invent it. This unique method of prayer dated back to age-old women's rituals, in which they held a great iron ring, called l'anellone piccino, between their hands, raised it high above their heads, and gazed at the moon through its center. When done just right, the moon's rays shine perfectly through the ring, touch the iron, and pulsate along the hand's lifeline, giving the ring bearer immense power and infinite energy. I actually own one of these rare rings. It was given to me by Dario, a very important man in my life. He had the ring made especially for me. I have used it many times in different powerful points on the earth, praying to the mysterious goddess of the moon, Stella Diana, Dea della Luna, Artemis of Ephesus. This moon deity is a black goddess who represents the dark side of the moon, the blackness of the cosmos, the immense universe, and the mystery of the life-giving woman. She is one of the many aspects of the Black Madonna. I will share my knowledge of this secret magical ring and moon ritual later on in this book. That night, in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, on the eve of San Lorenzo, I gazed up into the evening sky. I held my hands toward the moon as though my fingers were the ring, for I have learned how to receive the moon's magic even without the ring. La Luna looked down upon me, smiling, benevolent yet mysterious. I felt her intensity and again recalled Dario and our connection to the moon. I remembered falling in love with him under the full moon many years earlier in 1975. He and I were also deeply joined by our devotion and connection to the Black Madonna. She guided our mutual journey. In fact, Dario and I came to this very hotel on our way to the Tamoriata festival with its ritual drumming in honor of the Madonna. Returning to the hotel at sunrise after a night of wild erotic dancing, Dario and I drank the Dionysian sparkling wine and felt the energy simmer between us as we made love, tasting the sensuality of the volcanic earth and breathing in the pungent aroma of the thermal waters. In this magical place, Mother Earth is forever alive, inhaling and exhaling, as though the dark volcanic soil itself is moving with seismic shocks, peppered with the strong perfume of lava, offering us her primordial healing mud from her womb. The ancient Greeks and Romans venerated her as Sibyl, black goddess of the earth. The Neapolitans worship her as La Madonna Nera di Montevergine, the Black Madonna of Montevergine, Virgin Mountain, the sacred mountain where the Roman poet Virgil kept his garden of magical healing herbs. In the sultry heat of the night of the shooting stars, I looked around and felt the potency of the towering volcano that stood to my left. I saw the sacred mountain protecting me, embracing me from behind, and the full moon shining directly onto me. It was enchanting, dreamlike, and finally I saw a shooting star. In this land abundant with the Black Madonnas, I made my wish. I want to write about her, to intertwine my story and hers as one, to tell my journey of self-discovery and how I came to write the folk opera, The Voyage of the Black Madonna. I vowed to empower and inspire others around the world to follow her sacred path, beginning with my own personal story of healing and redemption. This was my wish as the shooting star arched across the sky, then disappeared, and now I am seeing this realized by the publication of this book. Baptized in the Tiber. Let's go back again to the beginning, to my beginning. My father, Eugenio Belloni, was robust, commanding, and very handsome. Dark-complexioned, he looked as though he were of mixed blood, possibly of African origins. His family was from the Republic of San Marino, and his grandparents joined Giuseppe Garibaldi, the hero who was responsible for unifying Italy. Garibaldi and his followers traveled around the world, so I always wondered if my great-grandparents were indeed from an exotic place, somewhere besides Italy. Some thought my father even looked Native American. Eugenio was a true free spirit with unusual ways. He worked with his hands, carving marble all his life. He also was a champion in sports, especially cross-country skiing, horseback riding, rowing, running, and gymnastics, and won many competitions in these areas. In addition, Eugenio worshipped Mother Nature, the spirits of the mountains, the rivers, and the sea. He prayed ardently to the sun god, but never went to church. He hated Catholicism and the priests with as much passion as he loved nature. My parents had 3 children, my sister, Gabriella, my brother, Muzio, and me, the youngest. I had the distinction of being the only one baptized in the river Tiber. My father believed that I was the daughter of the river, to which he was strongly connected. One day, when I was an infant, my parents went out on the Tiber in the little boat my father used for his rowing competitions, and dipped me under a small waterfall called La Pimpinella. It was an unusual but beautiful initiation to nature. My parents didn't know that this was a common initiation ritual among the Yoruba religion, which comprises the traditional religious and spiritual concepts and practices of the Yoruba people. Its homeland is in present-day southwestern Nigeria and the adjoining parts of Benin and Togo, commonly known as Yoruba land. Yoruba is now one of the 3 largest ethnic groups in Nigeria, concentrated in the southwestern part of the country. African studies cited their population to be around 10 million, so unwittingly they also made me a daughter of the Orisha Ochun. An Orisha is a spirit or goddess in the Yoruba tradition, and Ochun is the goddess of love, rivers, waterfalls, and sweet waters, eros, dance, and music. In Brazil, Ochun is strongly connected to the Black Madonna, called Nossa Senhora Aparecida, Our Lady of the Apparition. This might explain my strong link to the Black Madonna as an adult. I was unintentionally baptized as a daughter of Ochun. Yoruba religion is formed of diverse traditions. It has influenced a host of thriving traditions such as Santeria in Puerto Rico and Cuba, and Umbanda and Candomblé in Brazil. I discovered this interesting information about Oshun in the 1980s, first in New York in Central Park, performing with Puerto Rican and Cuban drummers, and years later in the magical land of Brazil, when I went through a difficult initiation rite, which I describe later in this book. Even as a child, I knew that I had an unusual family. There was no one quite like us in Rome. Although my father was a precursor of the hippie generation, he was domineering and hard on us, especially on my sister Gabriella and my mother. My parents certainly made a stunning couple, for they were both dark and exotic, but honestly, they didn't have much in common. They had a happy marriage for a few years, but by the time I was 5, they had already begun to have terrible fights. At times, Eugenio was violent and extremely frightening. He was in a way the stereotype of an Italian male, very seductive and unfaithful. He had many affairs. He cheated and lied to my beautiful mother, who was a loyal, honest, and devoted wife. At that time in Italy in the 1960s, Catholic women couldn't get legally separated from their husbands. Divorce was not yet legal due to the power of the Vatican. My poor mother suffered a great deal and was consumed by my father's betrayals. Subdued by a patriarchal society, even her own mother would tell her, "This is your husband, and you must keep him until you die." My mother found support in her prayers and in the endless Hail Marys she whispered. I remember my mother always saying, "Devi aver fede," you must have faith. By the time I was 9, my parents told my siblings and me that they were thinking of splitting up, and it broke my heart. But when they finally did get a separation, I knew it was the only way my mother would survive. In many ways, it saved her wounded spirit and restored her dignity and pride. She was one of the few women at that time, 1966, to actually get a legal separation in Rome, proving her great strength and courage. Elvira was a role model for all women struggling with domestic violence and abuse by their husbands. My first communion and initiation to the Blessed Mother. At the age of 8 or 9, many young Catholic girls become excited about receiving their first Holy Communion because they get to wear a pretty white dress. But for me, my communion was a landmark event as it commemorated my personal initiation to the Blessed Mother, as well as my first retreat with her. In a sense, my communion paved the way for my devotion to the Black Madonna. When it came time for me to take the sacrament of First Holy Communion, we followed my mother's family tradition. The sacrament was to take place in an elite ancient stone convent in the center of Rome called Santa Teresa del Bambino Gesù. Although it was a joyous sacrament, my first communion came at the worst possible time for my parents. After a horrible fight, my father decided to leave the house. Like my mother and my siblings, I was devastated, but as the youngest, I was probably the most desperate. So as to make my communion, I knew that I had to go into the Retiro Spirituale, spiritual retreat, for 1 week at the convent. With all of the fighting going on at home, I knew that I would find peace and comfort at Santa Teresa, but I was reluctant to leave my mother. It would mark my first time away from home. Before she left me at the convent, my mother hugged me and whispered that she knew I was in the right place at the right time. Then I was shown to the retreat house where girls like me would live for a week, not allowed to see anyone but one another and the nuns. Not only would we have no outside contact, but also we were to remain in silence unless we were singing, praying, or chanting. To some this might sound horrible, but to me it was pure heaven. The first time I entered the chapel, I saw the most exquisite painting of the Madonna della Vittoria. I knelt down before her and cried, thinking about my parents and their possible separation. I asked the beneficent Madonna for a miracle, to bring my father back home, and to keep our family together. This was to be the first of many strong mystical experiences I would have in my life. In the chapel I remember seeing the Madonna's sweet face weep with me. Then she smiled kindly, nodded, and told me that my father would be back home by the time I left the convent after my communion. Even though I was only a child, the retreat at Santa Teresa was a deep, transcendent experience for me. I felt so peaceful there that I didn't want to leave. I prayed every day at the feet of my dear friend, La Madonna, nurtured and protected. The day of my first communion arrived. There were many girls, a long line of us, all dressed in white vestments, with white wimples on our heads, similar to what the nuns wore. It was a spectacular ceremony. We were not permitted to see anyone until we went out into the church. To my surprise, both my father and my mother were there together, smiling warmly, finally reunited and in harmony. I felt that the Madonna had listened to my prayers and performed the miracle I had pleaded for, even though my parents' reunion would be short-lived. A long time afterward, I realized that the painting of the Madonna I had prayed so ardently under in the convent was believed by many to be Maria Maddalena, Mary Magdalene, another aspect of the Black Madonna. I was being led to her, even as a young girl of 8. Prelude, a child actress discovered by Anna Magnani, a first bite of love, and escaping to New York. In many ways, I had a tough childhood, watching my parents constantly fight and witnessing domestic violence firsthand in a time when that expression wasn't even used yet. I lived in the typical Italian patriarchal society in which women were supposed to receive abuse and accept it. I knew at once that this wasn't the type of life I wanted for myself when I grew up, and I would do everything in my power to avoid it. One of my first childhood memories was being molested when I was only 12. I was on my way home from school to have lunch. A tall, distinguished-looking man wearing dark sunglasses entered the building with me and came into the elevator. Polite and innocent, I thought he was going to visit someone in our building. I had no idea that he had followed me from school and that he was what we called a maniaco sessual, a sex maniac. As soon as the elevator took off, the man began saying obscene words to me. I was terrified, but I did the right thing. I didn't scream, but calmly stopped the elevator and sent it back down to the ground floor. I didn't want him to find out where I lived. That was the longest 5 minutes in my life. As soon as we reached the ground floor, I began yelling for help. My attacker quickly ran out of the elevator. The concierge immediately came out, and we called the police, and then my parents, but he was gone. My father was determined to catch this maniaco sessual, and probably would have killed him if he had found him. I went to the police station, and unlike many other girls who were victims of child molestation, I filed a complete report with an accurate description of my attacker. A few months later, he was caught and was put in jail. To this day, I am proud of my courage as a little girl. I fought for women's rights and stood up against sexual abuse, even as a 12-year-old. This incident, though horrific, was a blessing in a sense. Although it left a deep scar in my life, it would later help me in my healing work with other women, especially victims of sexual abuse. Despite these sad incidents, there were also good times with my family. What redeemed me most was being a child performer. I loved the attention I got, thrived on it even. I sang and acted in front of a mirror. changing outfits constantly. Everyone told me I had a good singing voice. Soon I became the soloist of my school choir. For fun, I even started a small underground theater group. My mother was always very supportive of my artistic inclinations, probably because she had wanted to be an actress herself, but was denied permission by her parents. Mama even resembled the great Italian actress Anna Magnani. Magnani is perhaps best known for her portrayal of a Sicilian widow in the film The Rose Tattoo, which earned her an Academy Award for Best Actress and for her memorable role in the Roberto Rossellini film Open City. When I was 14, I had the immense blessing of being cast by the legendary Anna Magnani to play her niece in the play La Lupa, the She-Wolf. It was written by the esteemed Sicilian author Giovanni Verga and was directed by Franco Zeffirelli. I was over the moon with delight at my good fortune. This incredible career opportunity occurred at the same time I experienced my first love, my first kiss with a beautiful boy named Piero. It was magical as my classmate and I kissed after school in Villa Borghese Park at dusk, surrounded by fireflies. Piero was handsome, wild and tall, with dark blonde hair, amazing piercing dark almond eyes, and beautiful features. He dressed very cool and played the electric guitar. I was a budding singer, so it was a perfect combination. We both wanted to be artists and musicians. My dream was about to begin with the once-in-a-lifetime role, being part of the cast in Anna Magnani's play. But unfortunately, that dream was never realized. My tyrannical father denied permission for me to go on tour with the production to London. He had the power to sign the consent documents and passport, which he refused to do. So I never made it to the big stage with my mother's idol Anna Magnani. Both Mama and I cried for a long time afterward, and we swore revenge on my father. Around the same time, my first love, Piero, and his family moved from Rome to Florence. Though less than 200 miles, it seemed a world away for us. My heart was broken as Piero and I separated. We still loved each other deeply. I even promised him that he would be my first lover when I turned 18. After losing both Piero and La Lupa, I continued to cry for months, missing my sweet lover as he missed me. I was suffering from what I would later find out to be the bite of love, which causes women to become tarantate, in a form of depression attributed to the mythical bite of the spider, the tarantula, which usually begins at puberty. I now realize that it was during this time that I became a tarantata, being trapped by the spider web in the patriarchal society and the loss of my first love. It was this feeling of anguish, mixed with anger, sadness, and a deep longing for love and freedom, that later drew me to escape to New York. 15 years later, this key traumatic episode of my life inspired me to write my own version of the play La Lupa and to portray her as a tarantata. As I had promised myself, this dream came true many years later in New York's Greenwich Village. But first I had to get there. 1971. A rebellious Italian teenager escapes to New York. In the summer of 1971, my mother had a brilliant idea to take me to New York City. We would visit my sister Gabriella, who had gone there a year earlier to study film. My hippie brother Muzio, who bore an uncanny resemblance to Jimi Hendrix, had followed Gabriella to New York, so we would get to see him too. Thrilled, I left for a month-long vacation with $10, a small suitcase of summer clothes, an immense curiosity, and a desire for freedom. I was pursuing my American dream. When I said goodbye to my father at Rome's Fiumicino airport, I somehow knew I wouldn't be coming back. On July 20th, 1971, a Pan Am flight from Rome to JFK International Airport took me to my destiny. I was just a teenager, mature in some ways, but still very innocent and naive about life, especially in a city as fast-paced and dangerous as New York City in the 1970s. But I instantly fell in love with this wild, perilous place. So did my mother. We went sightseeing through the entire city on foot, Greenwich Village, Times Square, and Central Park. There seemed to be music on every street corner, and an incredible energy in the air. Mama and I felt like we were actresses in a movie. We remembered a film we saw together and loved a couple of years earlier, Midnight Cowboy, much of which took place on these very streets. One day I decided to spend the afternoon exploring the city by myself. I had never felt such liberation. I decided right then and there that I would not be returning to Rome with my mother. I wanted time to be free, to be myself, to be on my own, to find a way to express my artistic inspiration without asking anybody's permission. I wasn't sure how Mama would take this and forget about my domineering father. I walked to the west side and threw the keys to our Roman home into the Hudson River, shouting, "Libertà, freedom." When my mother started to pack her suitcase for the flight back to Rome, she noticed that I wasn't packing mine. Mama understood immediately. She began crying even before I said, "I'm not coming home with you. I'm staying in New York with my brother and sister." I know this broke her heart, but Mama Elvira never let on. She was always an intelligent, strong woman full of love and compassion, and so she accepted my decision. Even though I was a minor, she didn't force me to leave with her. Mama said that she would come back in 6 months to see how I was doing, and if she saw anything wrong, she would take me back to Rome to finish school and get back to my regular life. What an amazing thing my mother did for me. It changed the path of my life. Living in the mythical 1970s in Greenwich Village. The years that unfolded in New York after my drastic life-changing decision to stay there were intense, especially for someone so young. They left a deep impression on my soul for the rest of my life. I went from the repressed patriarchal society of Italy to living in wanton, surreal Greenwich Village. It was a stew pot of creativity, and famous artists were part of the movement. All of my important rites of passage happened in New York. Falling in love, losing my virginity, and being initiated into womanhood. Getting my first job, being independent, even acting in NYU films, and singing in cabarets. But my time in New York was not always easy. A great deal of drama went with it, and some tragic events as well. One in particular left me with deep emotional scars. 2 months after my arrival in Manhattan, a terrible thing happened. My sweet sister Gabriella was raped. Someone followed her to the apartment we shared in the village and attacked her at gunpoint. By some miracle, I was spared simply because I wanted to go to a different shop for groceries while Gabriella returned home alone. Although by some divine intervention I was spared, I was still traumatized by the experience. I came home with a bag full of food to an empty apartment as 4 detectives arrived, looking for my sister. Where was Gabriella? After calling the police and reporting the rape, she was all alone and in shock. Instead of waiting for the police to get there, Gabriella ran to my brother for support and protection, and then went to the hospital. More than 40 years after she was raped, Gabriella still says that it was better it happened to her instead of me. Can you imagine such self-sacrifice? In time, Gabriella learned to accept this terrible experience as simply being part of life in those crazy days. She has written about it in her book, My American Dream, which we hope will become a film. I deeply felt my sister's pain, and still do. About 10 years ago, during a session with one of my students, who was also a victim of rape, I realized that it was my sister Gabriella's violent attack that led me to the healing work I do today. Although I wasn't aware of this at the beginning of my work as a healer, my realization was a pivotal moment. Even after Gabriella's sexual assault, my brother, sister, and I decided to stay in New York. For more than a year, I lived in a Soho loft with other artists, including my second love, a golden-haired Dutch film student named Jan. He took great care of me during my first year in the city. Unfortunately, the angelic Jan was an illegal immigrant and was deported in 1972. My young heart was broken again as Jan suddenly disappeared from my life. Even if I felt alone at times living in the big wild city in the 70s, I wasn't lonely. I knew that I was in the right place at the right time. I wanted to be an artist, and struggling with the unbalanced schedules and financial instability was part of an artist's life. I was happy to do what I love most, sing and act. I worked as a waitress in Greenwich Village's Cafe Reggio to pay for my studies at HB, Herbert Berghoff Acting Studio, took voice and music lessons, and studied pantomime. I now believe that the invisible hand of the Madonna was the driving force behind my mother, which fueled my own devotion to the Madonna. I also believe that I was fully protected by her. Even though I took many risks in those times, I was always safe. This also gave me the energy and courage to begin my own spiritual quest. My quest is far from over, and it is still full of adventure, romance, music, passion, and mysterious supernatural events, all leading to the Black Madonna. Chapter 1. Who is the Black Madonna? O splendid star on the serrated mountain, with miracles shining like a sunbeam, hear the people. From all around they rally, rejoicing. Rich and poor, young and old, they assemble here to see with their own eyes, and return from it filled with grace, rulers and magnates of royal stripes, the mighty of the world having obtained indulgence. For their sin they cry out, and beating their breast, they kneel and cry here, Ave Maria. Stella splendens in monte, splendid star on the mountain, from Livre Vermel de Montserrat, Red Book of Montserrat. We live in a dangerous time in which both women and men need to connect to the true knowledge and healing aspect of the divine feminine. In many ways, I believe that this is the only thing that will save us. I feel the calling now more than ever to awaken the true power of women and to help men become aware of the ancient spirituality of the divine feminine, which can heal our relationships. In this time of world turmoil and paradigm shifts, I feel that there is a great need to acknowledge that God is a woman and she is black. In this book, I hope to convince you that the Black Madonna is indeed alive and that she has the power to heal and transform. In this age when racism against people of color is still a raging disease infecting our society, it is my wish to bring attention to the serious situation in which we are living. With this book as the catalyst, I will make a deep connection to sacred black images, which are popular all over the world, yet suppressed in much of the traditional thinking, white-dominated, male-governed world. It is my humble hope that the images, myths, and beliefs provided in this book will help heal our society. The Black Madonna is a Christian tradition with origins in pre-Christian devotion to the Earth Mother Goddess and the African Mother. The Black Virgin also represents the womb of the earth, the dark side of the moon, the universe, the cosmos, and the mystery of the life-giving woman. Like the Earth's womb, women's wombs have often been broken through different types of abuse and unhealthy relationships. As the Earth continues to regenerate herself, she nourishes us even if we are abusing her with pollution, mining, and global warming. It is my wish that women who have also suffered abuse can take a cue from Mother Nature and learn self-healing techniques like those described in this book. In these pages, I will shed a new light on the ancient tradition of the Black Madonna for all people from all walks of life to utilize, especially women. It will make the Black Madonna as accessible to others as she has been to me, making her come alive, transform, and help those in pain. A myth of creation, the black meteorite that fell from the stars. During my 30 years of research, I discovered many fascinating myths and legends relating to the Black Madonna. The oldest myths in the Mediterranean culture say that a black meteorite fell from the stars and was adored as a divinity in Anatolia, Turkey. It was then brought to Rome during the wars with Hannibal and made into a statue of the earth goddess Sibyl under the prophecy of the Sibylla Cumana, Cumaean Sibyl, prophetess of the underworld. She foretold that Rome would win the war with Hannibal, but only if they carved a statue of Sibyl in the temple that is now the Church of the Black Madonna of Araceli. The Sibyl also foretold the birth of the Messiah from a virgin and the return to a new golden age. Most of the churches and sanctuaries devoted to Black Madonnas in Italy and around the world are actually built on the ruins of temples dedicated to different goddesses, including Isis, Egypt, Sibyl, Anatolia, Turkey, Diana Ephesina or Artemis, Ephesus, Turkey, Aphrodite, Venus from Erice, Sicily. Demeter or Ceres, Persephone, Enna, Sicily, Hecate, Pompeii, Naples, Tanit, Phoenicia, Carthage, and Gaia, in some ways as in Tindari, Sicily. The Black Madonna's church stands today beside an ancient archaeological site and temple of the goddess Demeter. I was especially fascinated by the inscriptions found on the statues in Tindari and in the village of Montevergine near Naples, which boldly proclaim, Nigra sum sed formosa, meaning I am black but beautiful. The phrase is also translated as I am black and beautiful, and I am black but comely, from the Bible's Song of Solomon 1:5. It references the Queen of Sheba, who is believed to have been from Ethiopia, thus affirming the African origin. One of the first representations of the Black Madonna is indeed the Queen of Sheba. She is the treasured lover of King Solomon, known to be either a Shulamite or from Ethiopia. Her name can also be translated to mean seven, which ties in neatly to the southern Italian legend of the seven Black Madonnas. This beautiful legend about the seven sisters, which I will recount later in the book, is also intertwined with the Roman poet Virgil, who is initiated in the mysteries of the goddess Sibyl. Some of the rituals performed today in southern Italy are the same as they were in pre-Christian times. They use ecstatic dances, haunting chants, and ritual drumming with tambourines and frame drums as devotional instruments. Worshippers reenact ancient fertility rites through the sensual dances in honor of the earth goddesses Sibyl and Demeter and the moon goddess Diana. American archaeologist, author, and scholar Maria Gimbutas says that the first statues of Mother Earth were actually made from dark soil, and it is known among farmers that the darkest soil is the most fertile. The connection between dark, fertile soil and the dark skin of the Black Madonnas, many of whom women pray to help them bear children, is unmistakable. The Black Virgin also has a deep esoteric meaning and has been an important part of Christianity. Her worship flourished in the Middle Ages under the Knights Templar. In some places, as in southern France, Mary Magdalene is another aspect of the Dark Mother, as seen with the powerful statue of Santa Sera la Cali in Sainte-Marie de la Mer, capital of Camargue, southern France, and a place of pilgrimage for the Gypsies or Romani. The Black Madonna is seen also as Mary, the mother of Jesus. She is worshipped by Christians all over the world and is often crowned. In addition, she is recognized by the Pope and the Vatican as the Mother of God, and for her many miracles. As explained by Ian Begg in his book, The Cult of the Black Virgin, there are more theories about the Black Madonna. Begg explained that Mary was Jewish. She was from North Africa, lived in a hot climate, and had dark skin. The Byzantine portraits of the Blessed Mother attributed to St. Luke show Mary as brown-skinned, and because of this are referred to as Madonna Bruna. Black virgins were also crafted by the dark-skinned peoples of the Middle East. Artists used dusky wood, such as ebony or wood from olive, oak, apple, and pear trees, and the volcanic rock basalt, which is black. The numerous black and dark Jesus icons found worldwide, but especially in southern Italy, are crafted from similar materials. In early Christianity, people still worship the ancient Greek and Roman goddesses. The dominant religion of the Holy Roman Empire involved many goddesses melting into one another. Eventually, the older statues of the goddesses and pagan deities were destroyed, but many of these smaller statues survived, hidden in the earth or in the hollows of trees, especially in remote rural locations, just like the Black Madonnas that are found throughout southern Italy. The divine feminine principle was represented by black virgins who depicted Mary, the mother of Jesus. Side by side with Christianity, the ancient goddess religion survived into the Christian era. The most popular cults were devoted to three black goddesses, Artemis of Ephesus, Sibyl, and Isis. I will delve into more about these important figures later in the book. In the year 431 CE, the Virgin Mary was proclaimed as the Mother of God in Ephesus, Turkey. There it is believed that she spent her last years and made her assumption into heaven. To this day, the most important feast in Italy is Ferragosto, the Feast of the Assumption, on August 15th, when the whole country, especially the South, celebrates Mary, the Mother of God, rising miraculously into heaven. The most passionate and powerful feasts celebrating the Black Madonnas stretch long into the night. These are ceremonies that incorporate ritual drumming, ancient chants, and trance dances. Countless miracles and supernatural phenomena occur during these celebrations with no logical explanation. But I believe that if you trust in the Universal Mother's unconditional love, anything is possible. Discovering Southern Italian folk music, traveling to Italy, and unveiling the Black Madonna. I did not consciously begin my quest for the Black Madonna, but instead was found by her. It all began in 1979, during a summer full of passion, music, and transformation. I fell in love with Southern Italian folk music and with the wonderful guitarist who reintroduced me to it, John LaBarbera. I had met John a couple of years earlier at Greenwich Village's Café Dante on McDougal Street, across from Bob Dylan's house. John had just returned from his musical tour in Italy with the Southern Italian folk music group Pupi e Fresedi, who also worked in America with the Bread and Puppet Theater group. John missed Italy immensely, and when he walked into Café Dante with his guitar, he was hoping to meet some Italian guitarists. When we met, we liked each other immediately. John was tall and handsome, with curly black hair and a mustache. He always dressed in dark clothes, smoked a pipe, like me, and really had his own lifestyle. He was humorous when speaking English, but he was even funnier when he spoke in his imperfect Italian, because sometimes he said inappropriate words that left the Italians howling. I fell in love with John's guitar playing. I thought he embodied the god Bacchus with his ecstatic music and laughter, and I was swept into John's arms like a bacchante in a trance. I sang Italian folk songs with John, and he accompanied me as if he had done so all his life. We both felt that we had past lives together. Many times when we were in Italy together, we felt that we had lives intertwined there as musicians during the Renaissance, performing, traveling around, and living intricate love stories. I was completely bewitched by the unbridled, powerful music John had learned from the Italian musicians, especially the healing dance of the tarantella. The music's unique, passionate style of tambourine playing touched something deep and familiar in my heart. As I watched John master the obsessive 6/8 rhythms, I decided that I just had to learn how to play the tambourine so that I could accompany him. It was some time later, after I'd mastered the tamburello, an Italian tambourine, that I realized I was continuing my paternal grandfather's tradition. He also played the tamburello, as well as the mandolin. Perhaps this was the reason the intense 6/8 rhythm seemed so familiar to me in the beginning. It truly was in my blood. The fruit of John's and my romance is the group we founded in 1980 called I Giuliardi di Piazza, the Jesters of the Square. We dedicated it to the revival of Southern Italian folk music and dance and the theater of the Commedia dell'arte, and we are still performing to this day, 37 years later, a real act of love. Back in 1980, John and I knew that the only way to be authentic in this style of music and theater, to fully understand the culture and interpret it for the New York audience, we had to go back to southern Italy as often as possible to do field research, in addition to our extensive library research in New York and Rome. We were so young, so in love, so poor, and so happy, playing inspiring music together, traveling from town to town across southern Italy, experiencing crazy situations, many times risking our lives in dangerous and remote areas where the mafia still ruled over everything and everyone. Despite these perils, John and I were always safe and always found hospitality with wonderful people. Perhaps it was once again the Black Madonna, always looking out for me. Coast of the Gods, Tropea, Calabria. While traveling through remote areas of southern Italy, I often ended up in stunning places, which I believe was not by chance, but by destiny. Atop a sacred mountain near the turquoise Mediterranean Sea, beside rivers and waterfalls, in green valleys and small canyons, with gorgeous white Romanesque or Baroque churches, I noticed something about each of these places that was always the same. On a high altar or in a small chapel, a mysterious, beautiful figure of the Black Madonna also stood. I was intrigued, drawn to her. I saw beautiful and enigmatic Byzantine paintings showing her with dark or black skin, and many totem-like statues that depicted a beautiful dark-skinned woman sitting on a majestic throne, holding a black baby Jesus. She called to me in silence, staring at me with her great inky black or hazel eyes, which followed me into every corner of the church. She seemed to know what I was feeling. She seemed to know all my secrets. I felt an intense energy coming from the Madonna's faces and eyes, all of tenderness, forgiveness, austerity, compassion, sorrow, and universal love. When I participated in feasts and processions, I witnessed thousands of people making vows, lifting the heavy statues, running uphill, walking barefoot for hours, singing and chanting, crying, praying, and asking for miracles, which still happen. As I continued my research, I discovered that the Black Madonna is a Christian tradition that has roots in the pre-Christian worship of the earth and the African mother. I needed to know more. One of the most amazing experiences I had regarding trance and shamanic power was that first year in Calabria. It was after the Feast of the Madonna of the Sea in Vibo Marina on August 21st. The men, mainly local fishermen and new friends whom I'd met there, had a rowdy party on the beach at night. They roasted the fish they'd caught on a homemade coal grill. They drank a great deal of wine, sang, and danced non-stop to the frantic 6/8 rhythm of the tarantella calabrese. This is a martial arts type of dance known as la scherma, which was originally done with knives. They clearly entered a trance and shifted into the role of shaman. I honestly became afraid and watched with John La Barbera, worried about what might happen next. Suddenly, the dark-faced, blue-eyed men took off most of their clothes and began dancing intricate tarantella steps on burning hot coals. They danced for several minutes without stopping, with no pain or burns. As they danced, they made the sign of the cross, looking out into the sea where the boat carrying Mary was still lit, and shouted, "Eviva Maria, long live Mary." The men ended with a haunting Arabic-sounding chant to Our Lady, which I will share with you later. See here. Calabria, 1980. Discovering the first Black Madonna. In the summer of 1980, John and I went to Calabria for the first time, looking for musicians specializing in the music for the Tarantelle Calabrese, playing the chitarra battente, which is a 10-string Renaissance folk guitar. We were also on a quest to meet Professor Luigi Lombardi Satriani, the famous writer and anthropologist. Satriani was also a great scholar and collector of folk music and legends. On a hot summer day, John and I took a long 8-hour train ride from Rome to Tropea, Calabria. We carried his guitar, my first tambourine, a tape recorder, and a camera, plus lots of curiosity and delight. We were about to learn more about the infectious music of this remote region, a culture that has been uncontaminated by outside influences, the true authentic cultura populare. The train station at Tropea was hot and deserted. It seemed that we had gone back in time. The few people we saw looked at us suspiciously because we were obviously outsiders. John and I agreed not to speak English so we wouldn't attract too much attention as American tourists. Unfortunately, it didn't work. I had a knack for attracting attention. I was young, dark-complexioned, and exotic-looking, so men often stared at me and at times followed us. It made John scared, and he felt very uncomfortable. Still, we pressed on with our research. When our host came to pick us up in a Mercedes, we immediately understood that he was a big shot in this small town. Our room in his house was more like the presidential suite in a paradise resort, beautifully appointed with a huge veranda. We sat there at sunset gazing at the sea and the smoking island of Volcano, which is part of Sicily. As we soaked in the beauty around us, John and I played music, inspired by the magic of the land. He stroked his sensuous guitar, and I sang erotic songs in dialect. Everything around us was mysterious, including the Black Madonnas whom we would soon meet. John and I were treated like a king and queen. We ate amazing food and received a level of hospitality we had never experienced before. The people of Calabria were honored that we had come all the way from New York to learn more about their traditions. They couldn't believe that we were going to bring their rich traditions back to America. Our host hired John and me to play in his hometown of Pargelia. Its name in Greek is Paraelios, which means in front of the sun. We were to perform for the feast of their beautiful Madonna Bruna, a Byzantine icon with brown skin and soulful, merciful eyes. In the role of the masked character Pulcinella from the Neapolitan Commedia dell'arte, I sang and played tambourine, as John accompanied me on guitar. The people of Pargelia loved it. The procession for Madonna Bruna after our performance was extremely powerful. I felt oddly moved and drawn to the Dark Mother of Jesus. I asked if there were more Madonnas, Bruna or Nera, in the area, and was told that there indeed were. The next day, John and I were taken to the beautiful town of Tropea itself, which was very different from its dusty train station. Tropea was a jewel of art and magnificent scenery, perched above the turquoise Tyrrhenian Sea. I was in awe when I came face to face with the well-known Black Madonna in Tropea's stunning cathedral. La Madonna di Romania, Madonna of Romania, is a dark icon believed to be from the Orient. I stared at her rich, dark skin, her beautiful face with its enormous, melancholic, deep onyx eyes. She held her sweet, dark baby Jesus to her left cheek as he looked up at her, but it was as though her thoughts were elsewhere as she stared into the infinite, into us, into our hearts and our souls. She was staring at me and the world. Her style of dress was not traditional Italian. Instead, she wore a beautiful golden crown of stars and a Byzantine-inspired dark cape and tunic decorated with symbols and jewelry. Later in my studies, I realized that the crown symbolized that she was Mary, Mother of God and Queen of Heaven. Baby Jesus wore a red tunic and also wore a crown. With his left hand, he held on to his mother's veil, as if asking for her protection. This is by far one of the most affectionate icons of Mary and Jesus. The love and compassion emanating from them was palpable. A childhood memory of seeing another Black Madonna flooded back to me. I suddenly remembered seeing a similar, very dark Madonna in one of my mother's favorite churches near our home, Santa Maria Maggiore. In Rome, they did not call her La Madonna Nera, but rather La Madonna della Neve, Our Lady of the Snow. According to the legend, in the early years of Christianity, when Mary was officially recognized by the Church, a nobleman from Rome named Giovanni and his wife had a strange dream. This dream occurred between the night of August 4th and 5th in the year 352 CE. In it, he saw the Virgin Mary asking to build a church honoring her, where the next morning they would find fresh snow, in August when it is so hot in Rome. The nobleman told this to Pope Liberio, who had the exact same dream. The following morning, a miraculous snow fell on Escaline Hill, and Pope Liberio ordered a great church, Maggiore, to be built on that spot. The huge, beautiful basilica, financed by the nobleman Giovanni, became known as Basilica di Santa Maria della Neve, or Ad Neves. In Tropea, I asked about La Madonna di Romania's legend and history. This Madonna icon dates back to 1330 and is the protector of Tropea. She reputedly stopped the plague from coming to their town in the Middle Ages and saved them from several earthquakes. Her last miracle was performed during World War II. The story goes that when American airplanes were flying low to drop bombs on the town, a strange mist covered Tropea. Because the pilots couldn't see, they didn't drop the bombs, and Tropea was spared. The one bomb that fell nearby incredibly did not explode, but landed intact in the sea, causing no damage whatsoever to this idyllic place. Immediately I recalled the miracle my mother received from the Madonna during the bombing of Rome during the same war, and was moved even more by the story. I felt very connected to Tropea, to the stunning Madonnas, the breathtaking landscape, the turquoise sea, the beautiful beaches, and the wonderful people. So much so that I return to Tropea almost every summer and still lead pilgrimages there today. The beautiful medieval town was sculpted into the rocks in ancient times, dating back even before the Greeks. The name Tropea itself is Greek and is believed to mean trophies, referring to the prizes that were won during the Grecian Age and later during the Roman Empire. These trophies were hung on a specific tree in a specific way as a sign of victory. One of the celebrated trophies was won by the Roman Emperor Scipione l'Africano, a Roman citizen who was actually African. The original settlement of Tropea dates from the 9th century CE during the Bronze Age. The Greeks settled in Tropea by the 6th century BCE and the Romans in the 3rd century. Tropea has narrow cobblestone streets and is full of old arches as well as steps hewn from ancient stones, which lead straight down to the sea. Tropea's beach has fine white sand, as soft as talcum powder, and clear water. At low tide you can walk to the beautiful Madonna dell'Isola, Madonna of the island. She is another lovely Madonna del Mare, Madonna of the sea, protectress of the sea, the fishermen, and all the people who live on the coast. Once a year, on August 15th, during the Feast of the Assumption of Mary, the fishermen dress in white and blue and carry the huge statue down the steep rocks into a boat decorated with flowers and lights. An explosion of fireworks begins a procession of colorful boats along the coast, filled with local fishermen and residents. The festival symbolizes their devotion to the Madonna del Mare. Still more fireworks accompany the procession, which lasts until sunset. As the sun descends, the Madonna returns to the Church of Santa Maria dell'Isola, built on a rock promontory. The fishermen again take her on their shoulders and climb the steep stone steps as the women of the town chant behind them, carrying long candles. It's a spectacle of sight and sound and deep piety. Up until 30 years ago, this Madonna had deep brown skin, but her restoration left her with white skin. This is something the Vatican has been doing systematically over the years with obvious racist motivations. They don't want people worshiping black sacred images, yet it is undeniable that dark-skinned icons are at our pre-Christian roots.